Hello, algebra students. In lesson 10.6, we are going to learn how to construct and interpret binomial distributions. Now, to introduce this situation, I want you to think about the following scenario. We're going to flip 4 coins, okay? Now, think about the different ways that the outcomes could occur, especially think about the different numbers of times that our coin would land heads up. Now, we've got a chart that we're going to fill in here. X, capital X, is a random variable, represents the number of heads when those 4 coins are tossed. We're going to make a table and a histogram showing the probability distribution for X. Now, so think about this. I flip my coin and I get, tails. Okay, I flip it and I get heads. I flip it, now I get heads. I flip it, now I get tails. Whatever it might be. There's different ways that 4 coins could land. Now, before we fill in this table, I want you to look at some options. So I've written out all the different possibilities that could occur if I flip 4 coins. So I could flip 4 coins and all 4 of those coins could come up tails. I could flip 4 coins, I could have tail, 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 head. Or tail, tail, head, tail, tail, head, tail, tail, head, tail, tail, tail. Now, in each of these examples, there's 1 head, exactly 1 head out of the 4 coins, but it could be in a different position. Now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ways that 2 heads might appear. There's 4 ways again that 3 heads could appear, and there's only 1 way for all 4 coins to be heads. Now if you notice this distribution here, we've got 1 with no heads, 4 with 1, 6 with 2, 4 with 3, and 1 with 4. Now, keeping those ideas in mind and looking at that diagram that I put together for you, we're going to now fill in this table. So, X is the number of heads. If we're going to fill in this table here, we're going to say that I could have 0 heads, I could have 1, I could have 2, I could have 3, or I could have 4. Now, for outcomes, that's how many different ways might that happen? Well, there was 1 way for me to have no heads. There was 4 ways for me to have 1 head. There was 6 ways for me to have 2 heads from my 4. 4 ways to have 3 heads, and again, 1 way to have all 4 coins come up heads. Now, what's the probability of that happening then? Well, if I go back to my diagram and I count up the different numbers of ways that this could happen. I flip 4 coins. How many different options do I have? Well, I've got 1 and 4, it makes 5, and I've got another 6, which takes me to 11. And I've got 4 here, which takes me to 15. And I got 1 more, it means 16. There's 16 different ways that those 4 coins could come up heads or tails. That being the case, if there's 16 ways that this could happen, when I fill in the probability of getting 0 heads, there's 1 way for that to happen out of a possible 16 options that I have. With 1 head, there's 4 outcomes out of the 16 available, which might reduce down to 1/4. So I have a 1/4 probability of that happening. Now what about 2 heads coming up? Well, there's 6 ways for that to happen out of a total of 16 different options, which could be reduced to 3/8. And then once again, because it's 4 and it's 1, these last 2 will be 4/16, which goes down to 1/4, and 1/16, which remains 1/16. Now, there's our table. We're also going to now make a histogram showing the probability distribution. So a histogram, see this word? Think of it as a bar graph. So I'm going to draw out a bar graph that shows those items. So my bar graph down here on the bottom of my histogram, I'm going to split it up into the different possibilities. So I've got 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are the numbers of heads that I could have when I flip the coin. Now, going up here, this is the probability of X occurring. So I got X on the bottom, and I've got the probability of X occurring. The greatest probability I had, I noticed, is 3/8. So I'll go ahead and put, right here is 1/2. Right, and I'll split up my graph accordingly. So this will be 1/4 here, here will be 1/8, here will be 3/8, and 16ths in the middle of those. So now as I make my histogram, remember it's kind of like a bar graph. So the probability of 0 heads coming up is 1 out of 16. So 1/16 would be what I put in my histogram. Next one, I get 1/4 probability of getting 1 head. Extend my bar up to 1/4. Probability of getting 2 heads was 3/8. We'll go up to 3/8. Probability of getting 3 heads was again 1/4. So I've got one, oops, and it's a little bit low here. Just a little bit higher, there we go. So there's 1/4. And the probability of getting 4 heads was again 1/16, pretty low. So there would be an example of a histogram that shows the binomial distribution of flipping 4 coins. Now, according to our diagram and our table, we can answer this question pretty easily. What is the most likely outcome of tossing 4 coins? Well, the most likely outcome would be getting 2 heads and 2 tails. That's most likely. That happens 3/8 of the time compared to the other ones. Now, what's the probability that at least 2 heads are tossed? So, probability that x is greater than or equal to 2, x being the number of heads that are tossed, greater than or equal to because it's at least. Well, if I'm going to find that, that means I could have at least, I could have the probability of x equaling 2, like there being 2 heads. Or, what do I say? Or, I emphasize that because that means we're going to add the next probability. Probability that x is 3. There are 3 heads in my list. Or the probability that x is equal to 4. There's 4 heads in my 4 coins. So probability of each of these, I had, let's see, it was 3/8, well it's 6/16 plus 4/16 plus 1/16, no overlap to worry about here. 6 plus 4 plus 1 is 11. So the probability of getting 2 or more heads is going to be 11/16.